should she tell Vince about the pregnancy? 'Cause she know Vince is counting on her. She is one of the top women of the WWE division, especially women's division, and basically trying to figure out how could she tell him. She thought Vince would be upset with her, and it turns out in some cases that that he wasn't. He was not upset at her at all. He was very, very, very excited for her. So congratulations. You gotta take time off, and you know, and of course they had to change the whole title scene with her giving the belt to Oscar instead of the money back contract. The contract was the title was in the briefcase instead of the contract. So definitely a good one. Definitely something to check out. About that part that was in the beginning. Now that's one part, one little small section of the book. She also talked about mainly her childhood. She was raised in a co-parent household in Dublin, Ireland. Her mother was a flight attendant, and she stated that her dad he was struggling to find work, and he always stayed unemployed. As she stated in her book, she said he was always continuously unemployed. So I think her parents were having issues. Long story short, they end up getting a divorce. Now, despite her parents getting divorced, her dad for a while stayed in the same household with her mother, and her older brother. And that was just until her mother moved on, dated someone new, and she moved out of that home to go live close to her boyfriend and his family. And her dad was in there, and it was pretty much a co-parent household. Like I said, I know her parents had issues, but when it came to raising their children, which was Becky and her brother, they did the best they could as co-parents. And I was in Dublin, Ireland. I know Becky was a wild girl in her childhood. She also was known for drinking and smoking when she was in her teens, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, and smoking weed. So, or marijuana, I should say, smoking marijuana. So, Becky was kind of out there. She was a wild, wild, wild child. And I didn't know all that, but that's how Becky, got down back in, as far as a teenager, being all out there, having her little wild moment. But yeah, Becky definitely was doing something different back then. She's definitely not that girl now, but she was back then. And she talks about too how you know, um, that her parents breaking up affected her a little bit as well. I think that's also why she acted out like that, because her parents were still in the same household despite the divorce. Her and her brother knew they weren't together anymore. So I think that's why Becky was going all wild and out, acting all wild, just doing her thing. I mean, she was literally on one. I mean, oh man, just literally all over the place. But basically you think you know Becky, but you never know this book. You know her, but you do not know her at all. At least I didn't think so.
You think you know me. You think you know me.
So with that being said, that was her childhood, rough childhood. She was going through rough stuff. And I know there were times she get to her mother as well. Her mother, she even stated that her mother had a rough time with Becky at times. And Becky said she was rough. And now she said that she's now a mother herself and also having a daughter herself. That she don't even understood how her mom dealt with her as a teenager because Becky was a wild child. But with that being said, that's another part of the book. And that was very interesting to see how her childhood was. I had no idea she had a co-parent household. I thought it was two-parent household because she seemed like she comes from that kind of background. But you never know until you know. Now later on, after she graduated from school and everything, she went to college and everything, and she started wrestling. Now she struggled from wrestling, which she started, I think, when she was back in 2006. If I'm not mistaken, Becky was about 18, 19 at the time. But she had a neck injury and she stopped wrestling and she became a flight attendant, like her mom's a flight attendant. She did that for a little while, and then 7 years later, after retired, stopped wrestling, she went back in 2012, 2013 ish, and that's how she got to Florida, Orlando, Florida, got on the NXT brand. We all know she was on there. Along the way, before between that gap, she did meet a lot of today's wrestlers that happen to be in WWE as well. She did meet Fergal Devitt, which is known as Finn Balor. She met Kevin Steen, also known as Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn on the independent scene. And she even had a relationship with Finn Balor. They dated for a little while. But they dated up until Finn Balor went to leave to go to Japan, which he did do in real life. Started the whole Bullet Club, which was a part of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And she says she knew once he went there to Japan that their relationship was pretty much over. They did a long distance relationship during that time frame. They did as long as they could to the best of their both ability, but it did not work out, and the two decided to go their separate ways. But no hard feelings between Becky and Finn. They are still friends to this day. They just not in a relationship anymore. Clearly, Finn is married, and Becky, of course, is married to Seth Rollins. So that was a long part of her beginning wrestling career. And like I said, got to NXT, part of the Four Horsewomen, which is herself, Bayley, Sasha Banks, and Charlotte Flair. And speaking of Sasha Banks, did you know that Sasha Banks helped, she worked with Becky? She pretty much, took her under Sasha's wing to get better. But that's another part of the book. Then later on, she talks about getting on the main roster, which was 2015. She, was the first ever women's champion, women's WWE women's champion, which was then known as the SmackDown Women's Championship. And she later talks about later main events in WrestleMania 35 with women for the first time ever in WWE history. Main event in WrestleMania, for women wrestling the women's movement. That is awesome for the women. So give them their credit. Give them their credit.
And I'm awesome!
So when she did that, it was a triple threat match of herself, Becky. She is Becky. Herself, Charlotte Flair, and Ronda Rousey, the newcomer at the time, and she ended up winning. And she was Becky 2 belts, winning Charlotte's belt and Ronda's belt simultaneously. The first woman to ever win both those belts at the same time. So, the press of WrestleMania, she said too that people told her that women could never main event WrestleMania. She proved it wrong. She achieved her dream, of such pretty much. Then later on, she talks about meeting, dating, and later marrying Kobe Lopez, which we know him professionally in the wrestling world in the IWC as Seth freaking Rollins. But she talks about how she always had a good relationship with Seth. They were always friends. Then it later blossomed into a romance. Becky had a previous relationship. Seth had a previous relationship. They were ended, and she ended up dating Seth Rollins around the time of 2019. They got together, later got engaged, then they got married, and of course, having a daughter together named Rue. So she talks about the whole thing, how she says she didn't want to, she was thinking about how dating Seth, because they were friends at first, it may ruin a friendship if they took things to the next level, meaning a relationship. So she was very concerned about that at first. But she gave it a try, obviously, and so did Seth. Here they are. They're currently married. They've been married now since 21 they got married. So they've been married for the past 3 years. I know their daughter is 4 years old now. and they've been together for yeah, they've been together about 4 years altogether. They started dating in 2019, so going on 5 years. They've been together since they started dating. But she talks about the whole thing with Seth and all that, and it's interesting. It was wild how they got together. Considering they both had previous relationships. I'm not gonna go too much into it, but you check out the audiobook. I do have it on here, parts 1, 2, and 3 of Becky Lynch, the average, not your average, the man, not your average girl, but the datings that was wild between her and Seth. Who I was kind of surprised because it was an unlikely pairing because Seth and Becky seemed like they're a mismatch. It seemed like Becky's in one direction, Seth's in a whole nother direction. Because women before Becky was not like Becky. Seth dated a certain type of women, and Becky seemed like she dated a certain type of man. So it was an unlikely pairing of Seth and Becky. So when people, when I heard they were dating at the time, it was kind of shocking, kind of weird. Like, oh, those two together? Oh, okay. But anyway, she discusses that. But now another part that she talks about, which is very important. She talks about becoming a mom for the first time ever, having Rue. The pregnancy, as I stated earlier, telling Vince McMahon about being a mom. And she later talked about losing her dad to cancer because her dad was sick. I believe that Becky's father, I think he passed away a few years ago. And I know she was very, very close to her mother, very close to her mother. And she, more close to her mother than her dad, at least from what I read in the book. But I know her dad passing away um, really hit her, and it still hits her now. She cut that promo on Raw last week, but because thing about it is, her father passed away like shortly after having her daughter. The daughter was born in December 2020. Her dad passed away literally 3 months after that. He passed away in March 2021. And she stated how her dad never got a chance to know her daughter well. She was only a few months, and she didn't even get to see. Her dad wasn't even allowed to see her wedding to Seth. So I know that really was touching, heartbreaking for her. And it was a lot for her, very a lot for her. So it's sad though. It was a sad part in the book, very very sad part. I'm thinking about it now and it's sad, but she discusses that with her dad, and she discusses how she thinks about him a lot. Of course, she wish she was here to spend more time with her because I know they told her the news that he was sick. No one told her at first. Her brother knew, mother knew. They didn't tell till later, and they went over to visit him that Christmas before before he ultimately passed away. And she said she knew that would be the last major holiday Christmas that she would get to see her dad alive in his home before he passed away because she just found out the man was sick. So, since her dad did pass away, I know he was not a wrestler, but since it's Becky's, that's Becky's dad, we'll give him a little salute.